Every now and then, governments do things that give you an idea of what they're really on about and what's actually going on. And last week in Parliament, we exposed a pretty extraordinary story about where spending and use of taxpayers' money has got to in John Howard's government. A bloke who's apparently made carriages for the Queen in the past, those ornate kind of royal carriages that we've seen when she marches down Whitehall and so forth, is in the process of making one as a private gift on his behalf to the Queen, and he wrote to the Prime Minister last year asking for some money. The Prime Minister took this to Cabinet, and Cabinet authorised $350,000 to be handed over to this bloke, and in fact ultimately at the end of last year gave him $250,000. No checks were made as to whether or not the thing was actually being built, no checks were made as to what the whole reason for the exercise was. There was no formal ceremonial occasion this was connected with or anything like that. It was just pure indulgence. Monarchist indulgence, maybe, but ultimately $250,000 of taxpayers' money just wasted on pure indulgence. Now, if this was a one-off, you probably wouldn't get that excited about it. All governments do waste money to some degree, but this has become part of a pattern. We've seen recently, for example, $1 million spent on sending a pile of Sir Donald Bradman memorabilia on a tour of India. We've seen things like $15 million being handed over to the MCC, the Melbourne Cricket Club, for a sports museum. Now, I'm a member of the MCC, and one thing I can tell you is they're not short of a quid. Why they need to be given $15 million of taxpayers' money is a question that I find difficult to answer. And there's a long list of these indulgences, of money being handed out. We all know the infamous regional rorts scandal, where things like a couple who are setting up a caravan park in the northwest of Western Australia were given $250,000 to help them along. Nobody else running caravan parks around Australia got this kind of money, just this one couple. So this has become really entrenched in recent times with the Howard government, and it's paralleled a pattern of increasing waste and profligacy and just general flab that's got built into the government. In 1996, John Howard, when he got into office, slashed and burned really seriously. He cut the public service quite savagely from about 140,000 people down to about 110,000. Well, guess what? It's now almost back to 140,000, but with a couple of key differences. The percentage of the total body count in the public service who are in the senior executive kind of boss type positions has gone from 13% to 25%, so it's almost doubled. And they are now spending about $360 million a year on consultants, doing things that public servants mostly used to do. So there's been, in effect, a growth in the overall size and scale of the public service, and spending is completely out of control. The government will tell you that spending's lower as a proportion of the total economy than it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, but they can only do that by selectively quoting particular figures. If you look at the last time the economy was roughly in the same stage of the economic cycle, which is the late 80s, you'll see that under Bob Hawke in 1989, 1990, the percentage of the total economy that was consisted of federal government spending was 22.4%. It's now 24%. And to give you an idea of what that difference means, if spending under John Howard now was at the same level as a proportion of the economy that it was under Bob Hawke at the end of the 80s, it'd be $16 billion less than what's currently being spent. So this isn't a small government, this isn't a low-spending government, this isn't a frugal government. It's a government that is spending money like it's going out of fashion. That's because it's getting a huge amount of revenue coming in. And just the other day in Senate hearings, we uncovered that Alexander Downer is getting Foxtel on at his home, paid for by you, the taxpayer, by the government, and the full package. So the excuse is that he can watch things like CNN and the BBC when he's at home to get important foreign news. Maybe that's fair enough. But they haven't gone for the basic package. He's getting the full package, so he gets all the good sport and all the good movies and so on. Just a tiny but telling indication of where this government's got to. They're happy to splash money around. They're happy to indulge things like people building ornate gold-encrusted, ducted, heated carriages for the Queen. They're happy to hand this money around because they're rolling in money. And I ask, when was the last raising gang? When was the last serious attempt made to cut spending? And when is the government going to start investing for Australia's future in the things that really matter, like skills, learning, infrastructure, When are they going to start rebuilding our university sector? When are they going to get serious about vocational training? When are they going to put serious money into early childhood learning? They're the things that will determine Australia's prosperity into the future, not helping people set up caravan parks, not setting up sports museums, and definitely not building carriages for the Queen.